The following is a production of Medfield TV.
Welcome to Simply Legal. I'm your host, Geralyn Warren, longtime Medfield resident and practicing attorney here in Medfield. Each month I present a topic that I hope the viewers find not just interesting, but also useful. Today I feel very fortunate to have with us the District Attorney, Michael Morrissey. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you for the invitation.
Michael's going to be talking to us about the abuse of opiates and its widespread abuse of opiates here in the state of Massachusetts, and particularly how it affects communities such as Medfield. Michael has been at the forefront of implementing preventative programs, so I'm so pleased to have him today.
It's in Norfolk County, as a lawyer, you know, and you see, you're in the courts all the time, that a lot of the cases that end up in court, even the domestic side of the issue or in the district or superior court, often have undertones of substance abuse issues. And I tell people we live in a very safe county, and God knows when the last time there was a murder in Medfield. I couldn't even begin to tell you when it was, but we have very few murders in Norfolk County. I think we've had 2 this year. That half the murders in the state are committed in Suffolk County. A busy year for us in the way of homicides would be 6 to 10 would be, you know, a low and a high for a pretty busy year. They've taken some of the worst prisons out of Walpole and moved them out to Sousa Baranowski, so there used to be, I think, an uptick sometimes with prison deaths, and we don't see too much of that now. Norfolk and Walpole still have their challenges, but nothing like the old days from what they tell me. And then, in fact, when I say the old days, not to date either of us, but I'm told that you were an assistant district attorney many years ago under Bill Delahunt.
Yeah.
So, and you know, probably in the last 10 years have taken some of those people out. But I tell people what really is killing people in Norfolk County, there are 2 things that come to mind. 3, if you, I think it's a byproduct of substance abuse, and that's suicides. I think we see a larger number of suicides. But we're losing about a person a week that are killed on the roadways of Norfolk County. And a high percentage of those people involved in motor vehicle homicides, they estimate, you know, upwards of even 70–80% could have a substance abuse, drug, alcohol related involvement. And so when we take a look at that for the deaths, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of accidents, plenty of serious accidents, but the very serious indoor deaths related, it's about 1 a week. And there are 8 lawyers in the office who actually go out 24 hours a day to respond to those accidents, because I think it's important that they see the scene and work with people that are out there so they get a better feel as they're going to try those cases, especially if someone's going to be charged with a crime. And so I think the roadway network in Norfolk County also lends itself to, you know, higher speeds and death. And when you add drugs and alcohol, it's just a deadly combination. So, you know, I say to people, okay, think of the simple roads. The Southeast Expressway on 93, you have 95, you have Route 128, you have 495, 24, Route 3 down the Cape. And then those are the big ones. Then you have, obviously, 1A, 109. I mean, 109 has its moments, driving, you know, the twists and turns, and some of the 27s, the 53s, the 18s, the Blue Hills and the Parkway system, Quincy Shore Drive. There's just roads that I think lend themselves, when there is an accident, someone's usually seriously hurt or dead. And so we do focus on that, and that's why we think we have programs. I'm doing a server training in Franklin on Monday. That we paid to bring someone in to make sure the bartenders in the area, we want them tips trained. And so we're paying for that because we think it's important that they have that.
Is that sort of the Serve Safe certification?
It is,
then?
absolutely. And same thing, tips, serve safe, so that, you know, they understand and recognize. I mean, we try to, on the Patriots, for instance, lead the NFL in what's known as the Hero Program. You come and you get a wristband if you're the designated driver, and they give you a $6 Coke if you have the wristband on. And they lead the NFL in having designated drivers. We all recognize that people like to have a drink. It's just the drinking and driving is dangerous. So, we try to work with people. We don't want to ruin their fun, but we want to make sure they, get and arrive safely to where they're going. And so that's an important message I've been working on. But when the former district attorney, Bill Keating, left, and he said to me, he said, I've seen 40 people that we identified the state police, and you were there when in the district attorney's office, there's a state police unit that's assigned to the DA's office that our primary responsibility is homicides. And so when there is what they refer to as an unattended death, then the state police have to go out with, let's say, if someone were to die here in Medfield, Medfield police would call, the state police would send someone out, that together they would determine accidental or homicide. Homicide, they bring in the whole team of forensics, computer, photographic, all the evidentiary, ballistics, all the people that everybody would show up. But the first initial indication and the scene is viewed by local and someone from my office, and they make a determination. And they're usually pretty good about it. When in doubt, they bring the supervisors out, and then for the more difficult ones. But they're pretty clear, and so those unattended deaths are really kind of the gateway of how we get into the community. And when you have, my father is well into his 80s now, and you have an older person who may be the end of days, and you see that in your practice.
I do. I do.
And so as people get older, sometimes medicine is a wonderful thing. And people are heavily medicated sometimes, and so someone were to die at home, well, that's with some dignity, and that works out well.
But there are a lot of drugs then in the home.
We're going to get into that in 1 minute. So the other part is you have young people dying as well, and you see a young person in the paper who's dead, then you think car accident, and I think there's only 3 choices: cancer, drugs, car accident, and then those are generally the 3 choices that you see. When Billy Keating left, it was 40. He says to me, he says, boy, you're doing a great job. I was only out a year and you got it to 50. In 2013, we identified 63 people that had died in the county. And those numbers are probably on the low side, because if you were, let's say, here in Medfield, and they ended up taking to the hospital, so they came to the house and they saw that you were suffering from a drug or alcohol overdose, they would take it to the local hospital. If you died at the hospital, we might not know about that. So my numbers that I have, I consider to be on the low side. And so they would, 63 in 2013, and in 2014 we say, gee, we're doing a ton of work and we're making this a priority, 94 people. And so we've done a ton of things which you and I are going to talk about, and in spite of the work that the coalition here in town is doing, is when you think things couldn't get any worse, as we speak here today, I'm somewhere north of 125, and I have 2 months left. And so it has not been a good year, but it's the people, the demographics are generally, last year, I don't have this year's broken down, but last year about 75% male, 25% female. And ironically, when you think it's supposed to be young people, I mean,
I was going to ask you that, the age.
The average ages of males and females together, I think there's only a few years difference, but it's in the mid to late 30s, which surprises me a little. Don't get me wrong, we've seen them die as young as 16 or 17, and as old as 69. So I mean, it runs the gamut. But that 30-year-old age group, I think, is really kind of difficult, and that's where it seems to fall. So we've spent a lot of time trying to deal with what kills people in Norfolk County, and trying to make the roads safer, and trying to make the bars and restaurants safer so people can enjoy them. And then conversely, trying to get the word out to people that young children get their first experience with pain medication.
Prescription drugs?
Out of your and my medicine cabinet, generally not even prescribed to them. And young kids have this superhuman belief that, well, some doctor prescribed it, so must be okay to take. And so I think the education that we have to do, particularly kids in the middle school and up, I mean, that's where we're going to win the battle. Right now we're not. I mean, we're 5% of the world's population, and we use 80% of the pain medication.
Wow.
So there is a pill for everything, there's no doubt about it. But I can remember my wife going to the dentist a short time ago and having a couple wisdom teeth taken out, and she ended up with a 30-day supply of Percocets. And so,
and she probably only needed 1 or 2 days, right?
Well, she's as she puts it, that's probably the better answer. But she didn't take any because she has a high tolerance of pain. And she looks at me and says, "If men had to have children, there wouldn't be any in this world." So but that happens, and So we decided, oh, so what can we do about it? Well, we've done a whole bunch of things. The simplest thing we've done, and I know you have used it, and you've talked to some of the people in town and your clients, is that the people say, oh, geez, I got these pain pills from the dentist 2 years ago, and it's been sitting in my medicine cabinet. What do I do? And it's simple. The chief meanie and the department here in town has been awesome. They've been a great partner. The chief actually joined us, I think, a year ago in Atlanta at a national prescription drug conference, and we try to get the word out that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you just walk into the lobby of the police station here in town and drop your pills in. You take them out of the box, if you wanted, the little screw top, and throw that away, or mark it off and throw it in. They don't care. Covanta, which is one of our partners. In the old days, I used to chair the Energy Committee in the legislature, and I remembered that Covanta had been, do a lot of community activity. They have a national program to destroy prescription medication. So the chief here can either wait for the DEA National Drug Take-Back Days twice a year, or he can send one of the officers down to Covanta.
I think one of the things I would like my viewers to know is that it is important for them to do that rather than flush it down their toilet too, because
environmentally unsound.
Unsound, and that's how I actually got into thinking about inviting you to talk about this, because I did have clients coming in that had been prescribed, massive amount of drugs because they were having like total hip replacements or total knee replacements, and they get like 100 pills, and they were like, what do I do with them?
And they probably just said they probably only used 20, and they have 80 sitting around the house. They went through 4 or 5 days. I think people are more aware of it. The easiest thing, and this is the simplest and easiest thing we've ever done, was I think 26 or 28 communities in Norfolk County have these prescription take-backs, and no one asked any questions. So you can drop them in. We're still dealing with the issue of shops. That's another issue, the needles. But getting the pain medication out, when in doubt, just check it out. And the police will take it, and they'll destroy it. And you're right, absolutely right. Why destroy the environment? No one asks you anything about it. You just walk up to the kiosk, drop it in the little mailbox, close it up, and walk away. And if you can, drop it in the cabinet in the tube that it comes in, or just take them out, put them in a plastic bag, and drop them in. No one cares. They want you to do the right thing. And remember, your kids or grandkids, they could be getting it. That's what the kids are getting, their first experiment with it. There are people who are very susceptible, that 1 or 2 times use sends them on the path. There are the kids, even in my own family. My stepsister had a son who had a skiing accident at St. Michael's College in Vermont and ended up being hooked on pain medication. He's now in rehab in Portland, Maine. It happens, I think I'm older than you, but I would say in the late 60s and 70s that there was junkies was the term, or it was a back alley problem.
I don't think you're older than me.
Well, it's not an election year, so it gets out of the compliment. So but it's people used to write off the people taking drugs as junkies, back alley, and today heroin is the cheapest drug on the street, still $5 a bag, except the quality heroin was like 30% pure back in the 60s and 70s. You had to basically shoot up. And today, the heroin is so strong that you can snort it or smoke it. And so people think it's okay because they're not shooting up. I mean, the mindset of some people is just, it floors me. The value of a pain medication, if you had a 30 milligram Percocet, is about $30 a pill. So it's a very high value. And it doesn't take long if you're taking 6 a day, and they're worth $25, $30 a piece. You're talking about $150, $200 a day.
So what does that lead to?
Leads to heroin.
Yeah.
Because it's the cheapest drug on the street.
Right. But does it also lead to crime, though, if people need to get money to buy the prescription drugs?
We think that a high percentage, just as, you're in the courts all the time.
Yeah.
So, how many domestic violence situations or young kids have you seen in a family practice that have a substance abuse-related problem? And it's high. The same is true in the district and the Superior Court. The bank robberies, the assaults, the breaking entries, the car thefts, I think some of the armed assaults and the drug rips and things like that, that's all people with a substance abuse problem. The sheriff is the largest detox in Norfolk County. I just had him on the phone. I mean, we're still looking for beds. The legislature is doing a very good job of trying to get more beds and more help. The heroin epidemic, I mean, you can't just spin dry. It's not like, go get dried out in 3 days or 5 days and you're done. The battle to recover from someone who is addicted, it's a health-related condition and problem that you have to deal with over a long period of time. And so I think that we have to change how people view these people obviously have an illness. They're not junkies. They're people who need help and assistance, and they're good people from good families. And there's not a huge problem here in town, but you've had people die. So that says to me that there are people getting pain medication here. There's been drug busts in town, but I live obviously at the other end of the county in a large city, and obviously we do have more of it. But the other thing we've worked on, and you and I talked briefly, was naloxone or narcan.
Yes, right. I was familiar with that because I'd been a nurse prior to being an attorney, and I was an emergency room nurse. So we always had Narcan right by the ambulance dock door. So if we had to quickly give someone
Well, I thought that this was this miracle drug that was kind of just out on the market in the last 6 or 8 years. It's actually a drug that's been out like 50 years.
Oh yeah.
And people, you think.
I am older than you.
Well, you at least had some familiarity with it. I saw when the Quincy Police Department became a national leader, one of the first police departments to actually have their officers use Narcan or naloxone. Naloxone is the drug's name. Narcan is the DuPont name of the drug. So people use it interchangeably. But the Quincy Police stepped forward and said, hey, try it. And they've saved over 400 people. Now, it doesn't stop the drug problem, but it will save a life. And here in town, I believe that both the police and fire have been trained in the ambulance service that if you can save the person and hopefully get them into treatment, we can go a long way to hopefully help turn this around. But it does not, I can't.
No, it's a rapidly acting drug that just helps the person right there, snaps them out of it. But it only lasts for a certain period of time.
Well, that's the other issue we have to warn people is that the net effect of the opiates you have in your system may last longer than naloxone and Narcan, so which is why you have to go to a hospital. So if you administer the drug, they use a nasal form. The police the fire department may have the injectable form, but a little spray in the nostrils, and the person, the science around it.
It's almost shocking to see how they come out of it.
Well, they come out of it, they tell me when they give them a shot, they come out of it pretty quick.
Yeah.
The nasal's a little slower, but they tell me they're ready to do another 3 rounds. And in many cases, they're mad that you've taken them out of their euphoria. But that's important. So we've trained every police and fire department. We take some of the drug forfeiture money that we have, and we've actually used it to buy naloxone and distribute it to cities and towns, and because we think that's important. We spent a lot of time, in the schools trying to educate people. We set up, when Billy Keating left, he had 7 pretty solid community coalitions, and we think they're at the front line of what goes on in the community. You get the right group of people working in the coalition, get the word out, parents, kids, grandparents, and it doesn't cost us any money. It's just interested people talking up what is the problem of the day. And there's some pretty good solutions have come out of some of these community coalitions about how to put the word out. And Walpole, for instance, has a contest every year with the kids in different grades about producing videos that they put on the local cable about making good decisions and staying away from drugs and alcohol. And so I go to that every year. It's like the Emmys. They bring all the kids up, and the local bank gives everybody like a $100 savings bond. And,
that's great.
Yeah. So, but kids get into it, and everybody competes, and people see it on TV, and we reach the audience. So we've tried that in other communities as well. So we now have 20 community coalitions, and the other 2 communities in Norfolk County, and nothing against them, they don't have any room in their lobbies. Avon and Plainville, the police departments are so small, so outdated, that they just didn't have any room in the lobby. But anywhere in Norfolk County, you can dump the drugs. And so
Plainville's growing.
Especially
with the casino.
Well, hopefully the casino money will allow them to build a new police and fire station.
Oh, it should.
To say it's outdated and a dump would be, I hope people probably, no one from Plainville sees this, but they could use some help. So we thought community coalitions is important. We thought having a conference, a safe prescribing conference, when you bring together doctors and medical professionals, dentists, nurses, nurse practitioners, and they're part of the problem as well. That we want them to get the word out for them to understand. Tell your patients they can get rid of the drugs here. This is what you do. And tell them that the dangers of it. Make sure they lock them up. Get a little safe if you have to. If you're on some kind of pain medication, you want to keep away from your children or grandchildren. In the old days, and I know there are people who appreciate this. I can remember when the drinking age used to be 21. When I turned 18, it became 18. But my father used to say to my brothers and I when he'd leave the house, he said, "I know there's 6 beers in that refrigerator. There better be 6 beers when I get back." And so people knew, basically how many beers there were, but no one counts pills.
That's right.
we really want to get the message out to parents and grandparents is you really have to be careful with pain medication.
And that's especially true with grandparents. You know, if kids are visiting their grandparents, you know, the grandparents might not be even thinking about it, so it's just not on there.
Well, why would you? You know what I
Right.
mean? And because it's yours, it's in the medicine cabinet, and that reminds me, you and I
Yeah.
talked about the realtors.
This is another great program
Well, the realtors set up what's known as a Safe Homes Coalition, and they have all sorts of community partners, including the district attorney's office, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Learn to Cope, which is a great community partner for families. If you know anybody or anyone's listening, it's Learn, the number 2, Cope. It was started by a woman whose son, probably 8 to 10 years ago, had an addiction-related problem, and she just got frustrated about talking to people and what to do and where to go. So she set up a meeting where parents could get together. That meeting has grown and grown. Now there's 27 chapters, I think in 2 or 3 different states. And we have them, I know there's one I think in Dedham, I know there's one in Quincy that meets on Tuesday nights. There's one in the Brockton area as well, and they are scattered around. I think Franklin's trying to get one going as well. Parents who may be facing this problem, you walk in, you can be anonymous, you can tell them who you are, it's up to you, it doesn't matter, but when you go and you talk to them, it's a great resource to say, hey, this is what we tried, this is what we did, and you're going to find out that all the things you're thinking about, you know, you're not alone in this. You know, I go into groups sometimes now, and I say to people, okay, how many people have had someone they know, you know, close, family member, other, you know, friend or relative, been afflicted with cancer? You know, and so raise their hand. My uncle died, my mother died of cancer, my brother's going through about a thyroid cancer, so everybody raises their hand, you know, and so then you say, now, how many people know someone who's been afflicted, you know, with a substance abuse, drug or alcohol problem? You know what? Every hand has to go up.
Yeah.
It's us. And so, you know, in order to deal with this and make people safe, I mean, I think I'm a firm believer in education and prevention, kind of wrest our way out of this problem. People who are selling drugs and who are dealing are going to go to jail, but people who are using, we're going to try to get them help. And, you know, we've done that through a variety of different sources and activities.
But with the realtor packet that you were showing me, I think that's a really good thing for our viewers to be aware of, is with the open houses that you were talking to me about. People don't think about that.
No, the bag actually, it's a, you know, like a regular Ziploc bag with a lock on the top, and the whole idea is just put your drugs in it. Now, especially, we've had a couple of cases where people have gone into open houses, and it's gone to your medicine cabinet, and so looking for drugs, drug-seeking people, and so the real trick is, you know, the realtor says, hey, listen, you neaten up the house and take your valuables with you. Well, you got to take your drugs with you. Or it's a good reminder that I know my in-laws are downsizing, getting a condominium, and one of the state troopers who works with us, his in-laws are just too old and they're going to assisted living. And, you know, clean out the medicine cabinet saying, oh, God, all to see the stuff that's here, you know. And so the realtors, it can be, you know, if you think about it, why the realtors? Because the realtors are talking to people every day.
Sure.
They're a great community partner as well. You have to use every single resource you can get your hands on, you know. And I told you that as we go out and do these overdoses, we work with the local police and we interview family members or people who were present, and we collect evidence at the scene. And sometimes that leads to criminal investigations as to who may be selling the drugs. But more importantly, we also look, you know, a lot of times we're finding prescription medication at the scene which may not be prescribed to the individual by the doctor, or if it is, you know, there is what's known as the Prescription Drug Monitoring Program. They sometimes call it PMP, and that lists down certain scheduled drugs go in the monitoring program. And doctors in Massachusetts are all supposed to register in the program, and the first time they see you, they're supposed to go online to check. Now, I don't know that that's enough, but it's a good first step.
That's a good first step, because sometimes people used to shop that out. I know that as an ER nurse, like, people would say, you know, like, go to one doctor and get a prescription, go to another doctor and get a prescription, and there was no communication.
That's one of the ways to stop the doctor shopping. And then there's also, now you also hit upon another problem. There used to be a doctor up the other end of the county they used to call Dr. Summeroff. And so he was a soft touch. And medication, time off. I mean, he was the doctor of choice. Long since out of practice, but there are doctors you can identify who are soft touches and who have been very, I think, liberal in their prescribing of certain pain medication. Now, so that monitoring program has allowed us to identify some of those individuals, and every 2 months, we used to meet every 4 months, and that, when I say meet, the local police, the state police, the only district attorney in the country that has a pharmacist on staff that I know of, and so we bring the pharmacist in and my community outreach people, and we go through each overdose, say, okay, what do we have? Can we take any action? Is there, anybody out there that we're following up on, following some leads that would allow a drug investigation? And sometimes yes, sometimes no. Then you take a look and say, okay, what did we find at the scene? And they say, well, we found prescription medication like Klonopin comes to mind now, and also gabapentin. Finding that more and more, but gabapentin is ironically, it's not a scheduled drug. So if a doctor looked at the schedule, they wouldn't see gabapentin. But gabapentin, I'm told, gives you a little bit of a euphoria and high, and it's for neuropathy. It's for tremors, but somehow people have found that it can also give you a little bit of a, buzz from taking it. You find a lot of heroin users that are also taking gabapentin. And that's one of the trends we identified through the meetings. So we're trying now in the process of asking the state to schedule gabapentin. Don't cut out giving the drug, but let doctors
Keep
know
track of it.
so that you see this, then it's, that may be why, and if you see this person lives in Randolph and is going to a doctor in Hyannis and getting his prescriptions filled in Reading, hello, what's wrong with this picture? Or people paying cash for prescriptions. So we talk about these cases one by one, and then so we have identified what we think in some cases even pharmacies and doctors who are not necessarily violating the law, but maybe the standards of practice by which they are operating should be looked at by medical professionals, and we've asked the Board of Registration to look at a few of these cases. And so we do that as well. That's another aspect. We also, with the chief here in town and the pharmacist, and I don't know whether any of the community coalition people, but we visited every pharmacy in town, which I know you have one because I passed it.
CVS, I think there's a poster in CVS.
Right, and we talked to the pharmacist and remind them about the drug take back, but also to tell them that, hey, you too can help us. I mean, you guys know more about drugs than doctors do. I mean, doctors ironically get their, where they get all their education on pain medication? The pharmaceutical companies.
Right, exactly.
They don't get it in med school.
I saw that.
And so
they don't even have a course, I think, at least when I was in my practice.
They should and will now. And one of the things that I think we're trying to change is that we force people to take courses on pain medication. But in 1997, when OxyContin came on the marketplace, it was a pain medication that's non-addictive. That's how it was sold. Now,
and we know that that's not true.
No, it is not true. It is a pain medication. There's no doubt about that. But it is extremely addictive. And then there's hydrocortisone.
Codeine, like codeine?
No, there's even a higher drug than OxyContin, Zohydro.
Okay.
Which is
I haven't been a nurse for 25 years.
Well,
so.
this is stuff that that if you thought OxyContin was strong, this is like 7 to 10 times stronger. And so they warn you when you take it, that don't let it dissolve in your mouth. And there's all sorts of people who may be end of life, okay, it's great stuff, but anybody who would be prescribing some of these medications, the FDA allowed it to go to the marketplace in spite of the advisory board's opposition on like a 10-2 vote. So, we're still trying to battle back and forth. I think that relying upon the communities to take a more active role is how we're going to win the battle. So we got to start from the ground up. So we take that serious. In the District Attorney's Office, we have a drug court, a veterans court, mental health court.
Oh, do you want to just mention that for a minute here? Because I know that's a new court that you have.
Well, all of what they refer to as the specialty courts. I think we're the only county in the state that has all of the specialty courts. And the specialty courts really allow a judge and the district attorney and the defense attorney to everybody kind of get together to work on a program that in some cases will keep people, most cases, keep them from being incarcerated provided they do X, Y, and Z. So it takes all the stakeholders. So in the case of a veteran may have a substance abuse problem. So it deals with that issue. They may have a homelessness issue, so deal with that. They may have a joblessness issue, so they deal with that. They may have psychological counseling, other issues, so they deal with that. So there are all sorts of providers and a network of support team that will try to get the help and assistance that the person needs to bring them back as a successful member of society. without incarcerating
I think
them.
that's great.
So, but it's not for everybody, and not everybody qualifies, but for the right people. Now,
Especially for the veterans. 'Cause
well, Judge Mary Hogan Sullivan runs all the specialty courts. She's the presiding judge on leave from Dedham. And I kid with her at times and say, I say, Your Honor, I said, I said, honestly, if I know what I know now about you and how difficult this is, I think I'd rather go spend my time in the House of Correction, because she has people toe the line, and she's awesome. I mean, she works well with the people. She asks, what have you been doing? Who'd you see? Did you make that appointment? Have you applied your resume together? How's the housing going? And if something's not going, she'll call one of the providers, hey, come over here. So what's the story? You getting them the housing, or where are we? And so she's awesome. And so she continues to run the Veterans Court. And her son actually has been overseas a number of times. So I think she understands as a vested interest. If you have the right people in place and the right judges in place and the right, I think, district attorneys and defense attorneys, everybody working together, you get a just result. And that's the whole thing. Why lock people up when we should be able to get them help?
I agree.
Much cheaper.
Right. I agree wholeheartedly.
So there's just a lot going on in the district attorney's office that we think we try to do some of the right things. We can always learn. We are sending another group to the National Prescription Drug Conference again next April down in Atlanta. We've received recognition for the work we did in Norfolk County for training people to use narcan. I mean, we made it a point to train everybody. Now, whether or not they all started using it, you can lead a horse to water sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
You can't make them drink, but I think every single police and fire department now is using naloxone. We purchased them for them. We continue to help resupply them if it's a money issue. The Attorney General stepped in recently. When we first bought it 2 years ago, it was about $28 an ounce, a dose. And then it went up to like 38 into 40s, and it went to $68. And we had contacted the Attorney General and said, hey, what's wrong with this picture? I think there was only one manufacturer in the country who made the nasal form. And they had a pretty good thing going, I think. And so she stepped in, and they reached a consent decree. They reduced the price to a fixed price in the $30 range. And the state now is buying in bulk, and people can apply now to the state. And we also help them with the cost if they have to. So that's continued.
That's great.
So
I've seen that being used. I've used it myself on patients.
I have not seen it, but I've talked to people like yourself and the first responders, and they all say, like, wow.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
You think you're losing the person, you give them the injection, and it's just...
like a minute later,
yeah.
they're up walking around saying, like, why did you do this to me?
You just have to be aware, though, that it's not going to last very long.
Right.
At least when you inject it.
Well,
and have a
Dr.
nasal
Dan
spray.
Muse is the head of emergency medical service at Brockton Hospital, lives in Canton, and he's provided a standing order for any police and fire department that needs access to it. Pharmacies now, you can ask, one of the things we tell people, if you have a loved one who has a substance abuse problem, hey, go learn how to use Narcan and naloxone. You never know when you're going to need it. We had it's funny, Learn to Cope. I told you what a great community resource they are. At the beginning of every meeting, they train people on how to use naloxone. And there was a woman juror in Plymouth that was at the courthouse, and I don't know whether it was a fellow juror or someone who was there. As you would imagine, people with drug-related substance abuse problems do end up in the courthouse, and someone overdosed in the courthouse, and the woman got out of the jury box and reached in her pocketbook, and she hit him with a dose of naloxone.
That's amazing.
Well, more people have it, but you got to remember, we're not solving the drug problem. We're
as I
fighting
said to you, it's
another
just
day.
a very short, exactly.
Fight to live another day.
Right.
So, but it's Norfolk County is a great place to live and work, and Medfield is a great community. But I mean, the fact that you and I are talking about it, hopefully other people will talk about it. I think putting your head in the sand to think that it doesn't exist, or there isn't a problem. Problem here is, small. Problem where I live, a bigger city is bigger. I mean. I can't say it's all Quincy residents where I live, because people get to be a Mecca, so there are a lot of people from surrounding towns that obviously end up in the city of Quincy.
Well, Michael, I just want to thank you so much for being my guest today, because not just for being my guest, but also being at the forefront of implementing these preventative programs, because as my viewers can see, this has been a great step in maybe getting the viewers and everyone aware of what's going on with opiate substance abuse and how we can prevent it by like getting people aware of prescription drugs can't be abused because they are addictive.
But just getting what you said, in your own practice, you've advised people how to get them out of the house.
That's right.
And so now we've given you a place environmentally safe. I mean, so people, lawyers, talking realtors, fire, police, as teachers, as we get out there, we'll have to start working on the letter carriers. They see everybody too. I mean, so there are people that are out there that, if we get the word out, then I think that we can help. I mean, it's just the world has changed since you and I were younger. The strength of marijuana is 10 times what it used to be. The strength of heroin is really, it's dangerous. And now they're mixing it with fentanyl, and kids are very trusting. And we got to send the right message.
They think they're invincible.
And they think a doctor prescribed it. So all those things come together and converge to the perfect storm, which is why I think we have the problem we're having. And we can break that cycle if we all pitch in and get the message out.
I want to thank my guest, Michael Morrissey, for being here today and for also being at the forefront of the preventative programs dealing with opiate abuse. It's really been very informative, and I hope our viewers find some of the information usable for themselves as far as prescription drugs and drugs that they may have in their own cabinet at home, and how to dispose of them and how to protect people that are visiting so that they aren't able to access those drugs. And again, I want to thank my viewers for tuning in, and remember, it's always simply legal.
Preceding was a production of Medfield TV.